Salve a tutti, sono Almarok e benvenuti in un nuovo video. Oggi siamo qui per fare un'intervista a Kenneth Svartalv, famoso per essere stato il bassista dei Gehenna, dei Satyricon e per essere bassista e cantante dei Nocturnal Breed. Prima di iniziare lo ringrazio per la sua disponibilità, per aver accettato di essere nostro ospite, vi lascio l'intervista e vi auguro buona visione. Why you started to do music and why you started to do with metal music? Talking about the beginning of your career and your influences.
Well, that started very, very early. I was, in a way, I was kind of lucky because I had a stepsister who, in this between, let's say, the summer of 1983 and 1984, she just blasted me with the heavy metal tapes. You know, Twisted Sister, Ozzy, Iron Maiden, everything she could get a hold of. She woke me up every morning to this tiny little cassette player, and she just put on Twisted Sister, and I woke up. And so that was really when I, kind of noticed metal. So I was saying, 83, 84. And it was just straight into, Twisted Sister and Ozzy and the early Iron Maiden stuff. And then Wasp came. And it's, like with a lot of people, it's a natural kind of development. But as my parents got divorced, we moved into Oslo, and there I started hanging out with people that was 25 years older than me. And, that's not a good thing. First, they did a lot of drugs and all kinds of shit. But I was just hanging out with them, and they started playing, Then I got to kind of go through the whole creation of metal in a way, because here's the first Wasp, here's Ride the Lightning, here's the first Metallica, here's the first Slayer. I was just, wow, it was these old guys, almost as old as my parents, and with long hair, and just playing all this cool music for me, and they all, since I was 9, I was hanging out with them, and already by then I had an acoustic guitar. And from there, I just, it was just obvious, I have to do something with this music thing. And it was just like, classical, totally 80s inspired kid,
Talking about Nocturnal Breed.
Nocturnal Breed came as I don't know, it's a strange kind of creation. I had already been in Gehenna and Satyricon, and while we were doing the Nemesis Divina tour with Satyricon, I don't know if it was a culture shock, or for all of us, it was the first time we were out in Europe, and it was the first time for all of us, including Nocturnal Culto and Satyr and Frost and myself and Gorgoroth that we had with us. Dissection we also had with us. They had been out a couple of times before. But I think it was a culture shock because black metal scene in Europe was not the same as back in Norway. And people picked up on other things, and it just kind of crashed. And I got this feeling that, in 1996, black metal was developing and changing a lot. And I just had this feeling that this is all fucked up and ruined, and it's not what, it was supposed to be. And so while on that tour, that Nemesis Divina tour, I was kind of sketching out the ideas for Nocturnal Breed, and I wanted to go to the thrash and heavy metal roots that I had. And in 1994 and 1995, me and Silenos from Dimmy Borgir and Nagash, that you had an interview with not so long ago, we have been doing a little project called Grotesque Bizarre, and we played Evil Dead, the cover that we later covered with Nocturnal Breed and stuff like that. So it kind of almost started in 94, and then it just grew into something in 96 when I said, fuck this, black metal is not what it used to be. I want to do my roots instead. So that's where it kind of started.
Talking about your work with Satyricon and about the tour from Nemesis Divina.
Yeah, that was, I played in Satyricon from 95 to 96, or 95 and 96. I was coming out of Gehenna with this kind of desperate kind of feeling, and I moved into an apartment building just straight, 30 meters off the road from where Frost lived, and we knew each other and started hanging out and stuff. And he was just like, "Yep, you need to meet Satyr and stuff. It was just kind of like a little natural progression into Satyricon. And they were just barely starting. They had written On the North. So by the time when I got into to Satyricon, Ishan from Emperor was playing keyboards. And I actually never got a proper answer for it, but but he left. And we got Geir, who is the keyboardist from Dimmu Borgir now. And we just spent a whole year just tracking out Nemesis Divina, going through all the old songs. And of course, that was a very cool thing. I love the old, especially the first Satyricon album, you know, playing songs like, you know, Fields of Sorrow and stuff like that, you know, it just feels very special, and you're doing it with the original people. And we had Nocturnal Koto on guitar and stuff like that. It's kind of like a magical but very hard kind of process. So for almost, I would say for 8 months, it was me and Frost playing bass and drums every day at the rehearsal place. And that's it. Only me and him just going through it over and over and over and over again to just make that foundation stick. So it was a hard kind of process thing. And, you know, this was 1996. This was very different from what it's now. And we had that legendary concert when we started off with the album, when we was Dark Throne, Satyricon, and Dissection. And that's one of those very special concerts. And from there, we just went on tour. And as I said, it was a little culture shock to get out on tour, both with the venues and everything. I think Satyr wasn't like really satisfied with the service all over the place. He liked some service, but all in all, it was a good. Looking back at it, was a good experience. Looking back at it, it was pretty hard when it was going on, and at the same time, I had my wife was in jail for church burnings, and I had my own court cases, and there was a lot of shit going on as well. So, but you know, the music always helps.
You told me about Antichrist.
Yeah, that's a very strange creation. You know, like with all the people in all the bands, so we all have different projects, and you know, this urge to get your shit out in different genres and styles. But Antichrist just came out of fucking hell. I had no no idea that would come. I had a really tough year in 2009, 2010, and into 2011 as well. And I just was people I hated and situations I hated, and I just needed to get it out in music. And I kind of fell off the wagon a little bit, and there was a lot of drugs involved, and me alone, just recording stuff, and it became like a possession. And I think you can hear that in the music as well, that the music it just took on its own form and became this really black kind of creation thing. And it's almost uncomfortable for me to listen back to it, because it kind of represents a lot of like, yeah, possessed kind of situations and feelings. But there are some people out there who like it, so I thought, well, I can just put it out. People like total hate music, so, and that's what it is. It's just hatred, needed to get fucking hatred out, and it took hold. So, you know, be warned. It's not the kind of music if you're in a bad state of mind, don't listen to Antichrist and drink a bottle of whiskey. You're gonna fuck yourself up.
Talking about your work with Gehenna.
As Gehenna was the first like main band I got into. I had been in a lot of bands since I've been playing live since '87. But that's metal bands, thrash bands, all kinds of different things. And I just had it with everything. I left Oslo, went to Stavanger on the west coast, and there was this demo I've been hearing, Black Seared Heart, and it was so good. It was probably one of the best things I've ever heard in my entire life. And I just listened to it chronically, and this guy called Eric, he lived just 50 meters down the road from me. He said, I know these guys, these Gehenna guys, they live just down the road here from where we are. And he just took me down there. and then it was only Sanrab and Dolgar, and they asked me like, yeah, are you into this? And we kind of got a good vibe immediately, and I said, yeah, do you have some equipment? And I had a drum machine and a big speaker and an extra guitar, and I fixed a bass guitar. And they didn't have shit. They only had each their guitar and nothing else. So I just joined the band immediately, and since we have the drum machine, that made us able to start rehearsing the first spell EP stuff immediately, and also old songs from the demos. And took 3 months, and we got to Dirge into the band on drums. He was also just a guy lived down the road from me, and the four of us stayed, I think, half a year before Sarkana got into the band. And like when we talked with the Satyricon stuff, this is different days. Everything was different. So we just kind of clustered up in the wood area and the nature and the places where we lived on the West Coast there. And we stuck to ourselves, made our own kind of music. We were inspired, and we knew the scene and the bands and stuff. But we were very inspired by what we were doing. And I think you can also hear that in, the first Gehenna stuff, that it's very inspired and it's very creatively open. And of course, we had no idea what the fuck we were doing since we were just young, 17, 18, 19-year-olds. But on the first and second spell, there is that touch of magic, that's it's very hard to recreate. And that's because the way we lived, and we were hanging out with each other every day, rehearsing every day, being in the woods, drinking beer together, having big bonfires, talking about occultism and philosophy in the dark arts, and all the music, of course. And we weren't really a party band or hanging out at pubs or anything like that. We were in the nature kind of part of it, and that kind of goes through all the music and all the feeling and everything. And Gehenna is one of those bands I regret that I quit, because I was just desperately wanting to go for more. But nah, Gehenna was a really good thing.
Talking about combat,
That's another one of those projects. I like that you actually know all these different projects. A lot of people can't connect them because it's different names, Svartalv and Destroyer and blah blah blah, all this. But yeah, combat is. You're gonna like this since you're Italian. Combat is my love for Monumentum. That's what triggered everything. The Monumentum album In Absentia Christi. That's one of my top 5 albums in the world. It's probably one of the albums I listened the most to in my entire life. And as I said, I had some bad shitty years around 2009, 2010, and Combat is one of those bands who came out of it. I wanted to do doom metal, but I wanted to do it as if we were in the 1800s. Imagine a doom band in 1850 or something like that. I want to try to get it to sound as old and crooked as possible. And it's just my love for everything Victorian, and I'm an Anglophile and kind of love everything about that kind of era thing. And of course, I like stuff like My Dying Bride and Paradise Lost, and those guys are tapping into that gothic thing as well. I love everything gothic, actually. So it's just a way to channel the gothic shit, because I don't think it's cool if I had, let's say I had Nocturnal Breed as my main band. It's not cool if I started doing gothic shit in Nocturnal Breed. Or I don't want to mix it up too much. So that's why it's so many different projects, and it's taking a lot of time and many years, and it's moving very slowly. But I'd rather do that than fucking up all the other projects. So that's why I have Combat. It's my love for doom metal and everything fucking Victorian.
we lived the gold age of black metal in 90 years. What is your opinion about this, about the crime of black metal in that period? And for you, was right then, and looking back, that you have sense today to do this?
If I would do it now, you mean?
Yeah.
It's, of course, it's like two different people. It's 30 years ago, up to 35 years ago, actually. And it's, I don't know. I don't regret anything. I can't help the way a lot of shit went really bad, like with Euronymous and Dead, and a lot of people who's committed suicide and died and stuff like that. I can't really, it's not for me to walk around carrying that kind of burden at all. But looking at black metal as it was back then, I think it was magical. It was raw. It was dangerous as fuck. It was crazy, completely out of hand. But very cool, very inspiring. It made me to a different person. It made me reflect on everything in a different way. And yes, there was some very bad aggression that came out of it. Yes, churches burned, blah, blah, blah. There's worse shit has happened on this planet than that, but if I look at my own, I had a court case with an attempted murder, and of course I regret that, because that was a civilian, a guy who just worked at the bar, and was no reason to kind of like drag him into that black metal thing. But everyone who was into it knew that black metal is dangerous, and that's where you can kind of sort the fucking quasi people out compared to the true people. It's that ability to stay on the edge and with the edge and kind of ride with it. So there's no regrets. It fucking happened. It was a phenomenon. And the feeling, the music scene that is now the reason you and me are talking now, the connection between millions and millions of people, all the shit that came out from this, I think it's pretty cool, man. And of course, now I'm a grown man, almost 50 years old, and I wouldn't go out and burn down a fucking church now. There wouldn't be any point to it. That whole era was different. But I'm glad I was part of it. I'm so glad I got to touch that real feeling of it, even though it will possess you and it will fuck you up, and you will have to struggle with it through life in a way. It's also fucking beautiful. So it's contradictory and it's strange, but it's also magical. And no, I don't see any reason to regret anything.
Have a relationship your music with your life philosophy?
It's in everything, I think, especially since I'm lucky enough to be good with my pen, so I write a lot of lyrics for other bands, like 1349. I do all their lyrics, and that gives me an opportunity to share with my philosophy, but it also forces me to study my philosophy and study the themes. And every song I study and I read up in the old ways with books and shit, and I really get into it. And being of an occult mindset, that just feels good for the spirit, to be able to walk that far into those hidden kind of realms and explore myself. And I think it makes me a better person, to dive that deep into those things. It makes me able to kind of rein in and control the beast inside in a way that feels good. So yeah, me and it is kind of like the same thing in a way.
If you want to be remembered for an album of your career, which is and why?
That's very hard. Yeah, I have to cut that up in two, because you have the bigger bands like Gehenna, and then I would say Second Spell, because that's where everything really came together. But on a very personal level, I have albums here that no one's heard that was recorded 20 years ago. So there's a couple of them as well. But I think an album like Winterbound with Svartalv, for example, it's created in such a deep kind of state of mind that it would be cool if people remembered me for that. Or you mentioned like Cold Orbit, that is science fiction music, and it takes the soul to a completely different space. If people actually understood it and got into it and could get something out of it, that would be cool. But it's very hard, I've played on more than 50 albums and I've worked on close to 100. So it's like, I haven't actually no idea. It would be cool to be remembered for the collective work someday. That's up to my daughter to kind of take care of that heritage, if there is a heritage after.
About your future project for Tizen 2024 and for 2025.
Oh well, there's been very slow the last couple of years. Not very slow. I write the lyrics, so every year I am participating on probably between 3 and 5 albums every year. But as my main projects, Nocturnal Breed, we released an album in the summer of 2023, and I was so fucking tired because I was stupid enough to produce and record the whole thing myself, which no one should fucking ever do. Of course, you have no one to fucking bounce the fucking shit off, so you're sitting there in the middle of the night going, well, I have 50,000 mixes. So I got really tired of Nocturnal Breed. I'm a bit tired of the whole scene in a way that is being kind of run by agencies and hipster doofus fucking people in magazines, and I don't know, there's some back players and there's some workings I don't like. So I just said I'm gonna take a couple of years, I'm gonna take some break. But I can't help myself, so I am doing little things. So there's a band called Ekrom that I've been doing lyrics for. They're coming out with a new album that I'm going to be working on. There's an album that just came out. Of course, the new 1349 album just came out that I do all the lyrics for. There's a split album on Photo Records with Engangshammer and Lik Tjern, which is 2 Norwegian bands. And I do the bass on Engangshammer, which is just black metal. I talk to the Gehenna people a lot, and there's a very good vibe going on there. I have, I don't know, more than 10 albums that needs to be mixed and finished, and in all the different projects, Combat and the Svartalv solo projects. And there's of course the ever-going fucking struggle with labels and people saying yes and not doing what they're supposed to do, and all these kind of things that fucking makes everything so fucking irritating and slow. So I can't really put down a schedule for the next years. It's more or less like whatever comes. We just have to see a bit.
In your opinion, how many things are changing in the black metal scene when you started from nowadays, and how is it difficult to become a musician nowadays?
It's so different. It's not comparable anymore. It's by far not the same world at all. In some ways easier, in some ways much harder, because there's so many bands and so many artists, and everyone can go out on the internet and be their own artists, and all this is great, seeing at it from an artistic perspective. That I think everyone should explore the artistic side of themselves, but it's way too much, and it makes everything kind of boring. The excitement is kind of gone. The festivals are too big and too many, so there's not an excitement going to the shows anymore. Like when I grew up, you wait fucking a year for Iron Maiden to come to town, and you just fucking explode because you just saw Iron Maiden, and it's 2 years till next time you're going to see Iron Maiden. It's just, there's an appreciation for everything that is just kind of, it's gone. And to then start in the middle of that, I'm just so glad I started with this in the 80s and not now, because that made me, I had to sit in my room and play my fucking guitar hours every day. I had to study the bands, read the magazines, whatever I got my fucking hands on. I had to study. It wasn't just there, and that makes you a better student in a way, I would say, which you can hear in a lot of the music in the old days, I think. But of course, just let anyone just do their thing. That's good as well. So it's a mixed kind of bag. But of course, I'm too old for this. It's just too much, you know. So some of it is good, but it's just too much. I could do these fucking albums without fucking Pro Tools and shit, you know.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for staying here today. Good luck for your other project.
Thank you so much. I'm very glad you enjoyed the music, and it's very nice that people enjoy the music all the way down there in Italia.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, man. Thank you.